People of Reddit, what is the best revenge you have ever got? I beat the crap out of my sister and sent her to the hospital. I originally posted this story on another sub, but was told it belongs here. I beat the crap out of my sister and sent her to the hospital. Trigger warning, this post talks about SA and a rape. English is not my first language, so I apologize ahead of time. I 26M beat the shit out my sister, 23F, for Zuli harassing my boyfriend, 25M, I can finally talk about this because all the legal proceedings have been dealt with. So I've been dating my boyfriend Mark for about 5 years. He's the best thing that has ever happened to me. He's kind, smart, understanding and absolutely beautiful. When we started dating he was a bit closed off and was afraid to initiate any form of intimacy. I at first thought it was because I was his first relationship and maybe he was nervous. 6 months into us dating he tells me that between the ages of 5 and 12 he was Zuli assaulted and arped by his mother. His father left when he was around 4. It fucked him up in the head for a while, and when it got out his mother was arrested, and he and his 2 older sisters were put in the custody of their grandparents who they lived with ever since. He was placed in intensive therapy, and still goes to this day. He's come a long way and has healed a lot, but he still has some days when he gets really depressed and cries. Part of his therapy was exercising, so about 2 years ago he and I started doing some bodybuilding workouts. I toned up a lot, put 20 extra pounds of muscle on and he toned up a bit. Because we've been dating for so long, and have marriage in mind, he told my family, a less detailed version, and they welcomed him with love and support. That was about 3 years after he told me. Now for my sister Sally. I've suspected she's had a bit of a crush on him, she'll flirt sometimes here and there, but he never reciprocated and usually ignored her. I've talked to her about it so many times but she didn't listen. To make a long story short, I had gone out one Saturday afternoon with some friends to get some drinks and left Mark behind because he didn't feel like going. My sister had texted me prior to ask if she could borrow a few things from me, a sweatshirt, DSLR camera, and a third thing that doesn't come to mind at the moment. I said sure and to get it whenever. She went when I was out, unknowingly. When I came home I found my boyfriend on the ground crying his eyes out and my sister trying to calm him down. He was having a panic attack. It's never safe to touch him when he has an episode because he may act out violently due to his headspace. Her hands were all over him and he was trying to push her away. Her shirt was also on the ground and she was only in her bra. I tore her away and asked what the fuck she was doing. She said that she was trying on the sweatshirt when he walked in on her, freaked out, and went into an episode. However, Mark through his tears said she tried to touch him. I asked my sister if it was true and she said no, but Mark again said she tried to touch him. We have cameras in the house, and I pointed it out to my sister. Her face went white, and I don't know what came over me but I saw red. I can't remember much, because I was so angry, but I beat the shit out of her. I can't even remember if I was the one who called 911 or her though her beat up state. I do remember kind of snapping out of it because Mark was still going through his episode, and I couldn't cry louder, and I had to help him through it. It's all a haze. I broke my sister's nose, gave her a black eye and bruised her ribs. She was in the hospital for a few days. Update, a lot of people messaged me to ask about context from my last post. 1. This all happened right before COVID hit, the end of 2019 and everything was just settled this last month. 2. The incident happened in our kitchen. The front door leads down a hall directly to our open kitchen, and to the right is our living room that leads to the bedrooms. 3. We have cameras in every room but the bathrooms and bedrooms because we have a Great Dane named Butler. He's black and has a white oval patch from his chest to his tummy. He looks like a butler who likes to get into everything, so we set up cameras to keep an eye on him while we're out. The cameras don't have sound recording. 4. My sister didn't rape Mark, but she did try to coerce him into sexual activities. 5. My sister didn't know I was out when she came over. I don't have the recording anymore. It was too painful to keep, let alone watch. Also, my memory of the whole thing is hazy, but the tape showed Mark answering the door. Again, our cameras don't have sound recording, but Mark said that when he answered the door she told him that she was there to get my camera and sweatshirt. He said okay, and let her in. He was watching the television, so he went back to his show while she walked into our room. She called out to him for help and the cameras showed Mark getting up to help her. I don't remember how long they were in there, but the tape showed Mark rush out of the room, while holding his hands out as if trying to stop an attacker. My sister then emerged half naked while holding onto her shirt. Mark backed up into the kitchen still holding his hand out. She advanced towards him. Mark said he was telling her to put her shirt on and to leave, but she kept saying something along the lines of, "Hey, it's okay. I just need some help, that's all, and you're a nice guy, just help me out a little." I think by that point he was declining into a panic attack as he started shaking. My sister took that opportunity to hug him. She said she did it to try and calm him down, but the tape showed her kind of grinding up on him. He pushed her away and fell to the ground crying and screaming. She then got down by him and was trying to wave her hands through his hair. Her other hand was also moving up towards his crotch. I remember from the tape seeing Mark flinch backwards and try to push her away. She always moved back closer to him. A few minutes later is when I got home and beat her to an inch of her life. I can't remember who called the police, but the police had showed up and my sister limped to the door while I was trying to help Mark calm down. I kind of remember them asking questions and trying to help Mark calm down. They thought he was going into shock, so they put a blanket over him and the paramedics came. My sister was quickly evaluated and then brought to the hospital. Mark and I stayed behind because by that point he had started to regain control again. I remember my parents showing up and asking what had happened. I told them everything. My mom stayed with Mark and I while my dad drove to the hospital to see my sister. Mark and I pressed charges on my sister: emotional trauma and sexual battery, Class A1 felony where I'm from. My sister tried to sue me, a misdemeanor charge, but it fell through. With the evidence we had, my sister was sentenced to 60 days of incarceration with a bond of $5,000. No one paid. She also has to serve 200 hours of community service, and her name was added to ASX offender registry. She can appeal to the courts to have it removed after 10 years. She was also placed under a restraining order. On top of that, my sister owes us $25,000. I got a small slap on the wrist and have to do 50 hours of community service. Nothing too bad. My sister was cut off from the entire family and still is. Mark regressed tremendously, to the point that he couldn't sleep in the same bed as me for months. He was required to go into even more extensive therapy. He's come a bit of ways, but nowhere like he was before it happened. It will take a long time for him to heal. I consider myself bisexual, but I lean more towards men while Mark is %100 gay. He finds the female body disturbing, to the point that we have had to skip over full female nudity scenes in movies. My sister knew of this. When I asked her why she would do this, she said that she thought she could change his mind. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm also not sorry.
Never piss off a rich redneck. This is a story about my grandparents' friend. I was a young teen, but given the outcome, this story has stuck with me. I've sat on this story for a while, but it's so satisfying to see a gaggle of Karens taken down a notch that I figured I'd share. For the sake of this story, we will call my grandparents' friend William. Now, my grandparents knew William from way back. My grandmother knew him from school, and my grandfather met him after marrying my grandmother. Anyways, in the 60s, grandma was a manager at the July 11th. William led a crew that went there every day. It was the only gas station in a 30-minute radius, so everyone knew everyone in that sleepy coastal town kind of way. Now, one day William was doing a job down on the waterfront and slipped, fell, and broke his back. While he was healing from the operation and was broke as a joke, my grandma would always make sure send him something to eat that she'd pay for when the crew would come in to grab their snacks and gas up, knowing William would simply skip the meal to save the money for his own family. My grandpa also took him to several doctor apps, since William couldn't drive for a while and his tiny little wife couldn't wrangle him into a car by herself. William never forgot that. 20 years later, when he sold off his now very successful business and was a millionaire about 20 times over, he promptly told 90% of the world to go to hell, but kept those that had always been there for him close. Meanwhile, he never moved from the house that he'd had since before he was rich. His only concessions to his wealth were trips with his wife to see the world and buying up quite a few acres of the forested land around him. If you weren't his friend, you'd take him for every other blue-collar worker in the town. There was absolutely nothing obvious to show that he was worth tens of millions of dollars. After his wife died in the 90s, William decided to take up a new hobby. As he lived outside of the city limits, he set up a sawmill and woodworking shop, got all the proper permits and everything. The saws were in a big old enclosed building in the middle of all that land, so in all honesty, so no harm no foul, right? Wrong. The family that owned the forest behind William's land had just sold it to developers. Thus, the new luxury-gated neighborhood, the first in the area, was born. Enter a plethora of Chads and Karens who were mostly from up north, and had moved down south to take advantage of the better weather and the nearby beach. It didn't take long before they decided to take offense to his little business venture on the other side of the 10-foot-tall wall of their neighborhood because it didn't fit with the image of their community. You know, the community he was decidedly not a part of. So, they sued him. Didn't even try to start a dialogue with him, just up and sued him. William was livid. He was your typical coastal redneck, and he would be damned if those damn Yankees told him what to do on his own property, that was not within city limits nor located in an HOA. William countered with professional noise studies that showed that some of the kids in that neighborhood drove vehicles that made more ambient noise than his little operation. Nope, the people in the neighborhood simply threw more money at the lawyers to continue on with the lawsuit. Essentially, their plan was to bleed him dry. Their lawyers, who were not locals, actually told William's lawyer that he should probably advise his client to close the shop so that he wouldn't end up bankrupt due to the resources being thrown at him from the homeowners. Due to the relatively modest surroundings of his home, the neighbors nor their lawyers had any idea the man was actually richer than just about all of them put together. All they saw was an older dude who drove a beat-up 80s model truck and wore Dickies jeans and work shirts that lived in what appeared to be a relatively modest home, especially compared to their McMansions. When William's lawyer told him about that conversation, William lost his fucking mind. I clearly remember his screeching into my parents' driveway in that old work truck, cussing up a storm and ranting and raving before he even got in the house. He came to our house. Why? Because my grandmother, bless her heart, was known as one of the most giving people in the world, unless you pissed her off. If you hurt her or someone she cared for, she became one of the most vindictive assholes that could be found in that town. I am not kidding when I say that her ability for revenge served cold was legendary amongst the locals. So William had come to the house for a dose of her deviousness. Us kids weren't allowed inside during that conversation. But after he left that day, I later heard the adults talking about how he proceeded to hire quite a few private investigators to see if there would be any dirt to dig up on them. By them, I mean the dozens of people in that neighborhood that were a part of that lawsuit. Lo and behold, there was apparently copious amounts of dirt to be had. I still remember him positively crowing about it to my grandparents one fine summer day months later. That 60-something-year-old man was as gleeful as the proverbial kid on Christmas morning. Why? Because after he learned what his little private army dug up, he started making some phone calls to various acquaintances in high places. The ensuing fallout meant that the lawsuit was dropped. There was quite a list of misdeeds that were discovered, but the ones that I heard talked about by the adults that stick out are, there were more than a handful of individuals that owed back child support. William very helpfully had the private investigators provide the mother's updated address and employment information so that they could pursue said child support/garnishment if they wanted to. On top of that, the IRS became very interested in several of those people, as well as various other neighbors. Finally, one household ended up in prison because the investigators realized that they were drug dealers. The pictures of the transactions caught by the PIs were helpfully handed over to the sheriff's department. Drugs are bad, kids. Moral of the story: never piss off a rich redneck. Edit. Thank you for all the love, fellow Redditors. I didn't expect all this when I logged back in this morning. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more videos.